Live from inside the Matt Black Kia Studios, it's Football at 4.
It is powered by the Inside the Birds podcast. A new edition dropped this morning, 6 a.m. Mondays, Wednesdays, Fridays is when you can get the Inside the Birds podcast with Jeff Mosher and our guest, Adam Caplan, on a Friday. Football at 4 on 97.3 ESPN is brought to you by Dr. Lyle M. Back. For everything from skincare to cosmetic surgery, go to ilovelylback.com or call 856-MAKEOVER for Dr. Lyle M. Back, a proud sponsor of Football at 4 on 97.3 ESPN. All right, Adam Caplan is with us. We have a lot to get into as the Eagles' search for a head coach continues. But, Adam, as we know, a couple are off the board. We'll get into all that and more. But first on this Friday, how are you, my friend?
Boys, good to talk to you. Yeah, we haven't talked in a while. A lot has happened since we were on last Friday. My goodness gracious. It's amazing. You know, we have a new head coach coming at some point, I think, in the next week with the Eagles, and Doug Pederson is gone. We can certainly get into that and why it happened. It may be a little different than you've probably read or heard, but there's certainly some things you've heard about it. The owner speaks. Certainly some people are outraged by what he said. We could get into that. Certainly a lot of head coaching candidates around the National Football League and who the Eagles like, and lots going on in Eagleville. I mean, it's quite the week.
Yeah, it is. So let's start with that. You know, why is Doug Pederson no longer the coach? Did he get fired? Did they have an amicable split? Did he not want to be here? How do you what are you hearing and what do you know about why did the owner and Doug Pederson part ways?
It's funny, on our show Inside the Birds, Mosher and I were talking about this over the last week and what might happen. And what we were hearing is, and Jeff, first kind of put it on our show last week, and I added my own spin based on what I had heard. It was very clear to us that Doug Pederson was pushing the agenda of not just Press Taylor being his offense coordinator, which never would have worked. Like, there's no way that would have worked as offense coordinator. But he wanted, as I was told pretty strongly, he wanted to come back with a lot of the same staff. And as Jeff Lurie, the owner, said during his Monday presser, simply, when you really look at the situation with he and Pederson, Doug clearly wanted to stay the status quo and kind of refire that way, refire up the team. And then the owner wanted to look forward and not back. And they clearly had a disagreement. I give Lurie credit for as much criticism as he got, and he deserved a lot of it. I did appreciate he's willing to kind of give some just an outlook on what the differences were. Clearly, they did not agree on the way the team should be built, and starting with the coaching staff. I think that is why Doug got fired. He was fired. There's no question about it. He had 2 years left on his contract. Between $10 and $12 million they owe him. There's offset language, I'm told, on the contract. So if Doug does get another job this year, he won't make as much as he normally would because the Eagles would not owe him as much. But the fact of it, because you can't double dip when there's offset. But the fact of the matter is, when you look at Doug, guys, it's quite the fall for a guy who made the playoffs for 3 straight years. And I could tell you this as an absolute fact, talking to multiple team sources. They went into last Tuesday's meeting, the first of 2 meetings with the owner. I'm told it was only Jeffrey and Doug. The owner did not want to fire Doug. He just felt at this point, because Doug clearly did not agree with the way they wanted to rebuild this team or retool it, he had no choice but to fire the guy.
Which leads us to the next guy, which is the general manager. And he is not the most popular guy in this town. Fans outraged.
Not now, that's for sure.
Well, not before either. I mean, if you take polls...
Well, it depends when you go, Mike. Depends when you... After 2017, it sure as heck was.
Sure.
But anyway.
Right now, after this season, though, if you ask people who's the biggest problem, they would say it is Howie Roseman.
Sure.
So why the fans so outraged by what Lurie said about Roseman? Because he didn't really specifically mention Roseman as so much as it's a team of people.
Yeah, and Mike, it was interesting. The media asked multiple questions about Howie Roseman, the general manager, to the owner, and you would think after the kind of drafts they've had lately that have certainly not been as good as the one in 16 and the one in 18, you would think, like, at the very least, and I know my 2 friends are season ticket holders, just said the same thing. Why in the world could you not acknowledge if your owner, you can say, look, the drafts have to be better. He didn't say that. He gave a roundabout answer. He didn't really answer the question directly. And that just drove people crazy. And that's why you got follow-up questions from the media because he just would not answer the question the way he should have answered it. It was just bizarre. Some of Lurie's answers, they were not satisfactory. I know fans were up in arms. If you just check the comments on social media, people were outraged, and deservedly so. I get it. The people want good drafts here. They'd like to tell their friends around the country, look at our team, look at the way that they draft, and they've not got consistent drafts since Roseman came back in power. 2016 was the first time in his career Roseman had full personnel control. I'm talking draft, free agency, 53-man roster, everything. If he wanted to fire coaches, he could if he wanted to. But he could basically tell the owner, I don't agree with this, and the owner could say the coaches would have to go. I mean, that's kind of the control that Howie has. But the fact of the matter is, the drafts have been inconsistent, phenomenal in 16, bad in 17, 18 good for what they had, 19 does not look good, and 20 it's too early. So what we want good drafts here in Philly, whether you live in the tri-state area. We want consistently good drafts, and the GM has not delivered since he came back into power, just too inconsistent. And what fans want, they want acknowledgement of that, and the owner wouldn't give that, which was kind of surprising.
Should we believe Jeffrey Lurie when he says they're considering a coach on the defensive side of the ball? Now, they interviewed Saleh, he ended up going to the Jets, and Mayo's another name. But how much of a reality is it?
Hunter, because I was told in 16, I put a scoop out that the Eagles were looking at Jim Schwartz as a potential head coaching candidate. I was told by Eagles source, no, we're not. We're only looking at him as a defense coordinator. And the person I spoke to said, look, you got to understand the way we think. We're drafting a quarterback. This is 2016. They made a decision. They're drafting a quarterback, and high. So we want someone to develop the quarterback. And that we didn't know then it was going to be Doug Pederson. It was actually going to be Ben McAdoo, who would wind up being the Giants head coach. He was the guy the Eagles wanted, and thank goodness for the Eagles he didn't take that second interview. It would have been a disaster. But the fact of the matter is, Pederson, people have asked us, Moshe and I were talking off the air about this, would you call Doug Pederson a success? Yes. They won a Super Bowl. I understand that.
Well, how's that even a question?
It shouldn't be, right. But again, he did get fired, though, Mike. He was fired. Whether you want to, it's a firing.
Hey, that's inevitable.
Well, look, eventually, sure, whether it's 8 years, 10 years, or 5 years, he got fired.
Mm-hmm.
But he wasn't fired. And I agree with what Lurie said. He wasn't fired because he didn't do a good job, although we can argue he did a bad job of managing the staff, which I've been on for 3 years. But the fact of the matter is the guy got fired. But I say he was a success. I mean, Andy Reid, would you not call Andy Reid a success in Philly?
Of course he was.
Absolutely would. Yeah, thank you, Mike. So I would agree. In fact, Moshe and I need to probably talk about it in one of our next shows. But the fact of the matter is the guy was a success.
Now, Adam, we had this conversation, Broads and I, about this whole, you win a Super Bowl. And at what point, what is the time frame of after the Super Bowl that is no longer, it keeps getting smaller and smaller and smaller that, people want to win this Super Bowl so bad. You're held to this standard of winning the Super Bowl. But winning the Super Bowl has now not become a high enough standard anymore. If you win the Super Bowl and that can't be considered a high enough standard to keep your job for 3 years, then how much does winning the Super Bowl even mean?
Well, Mike, here's the way I'm going to answer that. If Pearson just would have gotten a qualified offensive coordinator, a guy who's developed quarterbacks, he'd still be the head coach. I'm telling you, that's exactly what happened here.
Well, doesn't he have some say to say, I didn't want this Scangarello and Morningwig. You guys made me take these guys.
No. Here's what happened. Okay, let me clarify that. Here's what happened. Yes, Jeffrey Lurie told Peterson to fire Mike Groh and Carson Walsh. That's a fact. Okay, we reported this a year ago. It's absolutely true. Now, he didn't tell me how to hire Scangarello. They just wanted someone who's developed quarterbacks. He could have hired anyone he wanted. He could have brought John DeFilippo back. I was told last year he didn't want him back for whatever reason. So the fact of the matter is, when you look at this guy, Doug Pederson, there's a reason why he's out. He did not do a good job of coaching his coaches and developing them and developing the quarterbacks. Look at their regression in the last 2 years. There's your answers to your test.
Mm-hmm.
Did an awful job. That's all he had to do is redevelop the quarterback with better coaches. And he was not willing to do it. He wanted to go with the same guys. Every fan listening to our segment here on the Football at 4, they all know because they're all smart fans. They know Doug did a bad job of coaching the quarterbacks. That's why he's no longer the head coach.
I guess the thought by a lot of people was that Doug was kind of told that those guys were going to be his. You need to work with these guys.
Not true. I'm told by a high-ranking source he was never told to hire these guys. He told that what Jeffrey wanted was quarterback coaches and innovators of offense. They wanted someone from a tree, whether it was Shanahan, someone like that, but it was Doug Pederson's decision on who to hire. Suggested, and here's another thing about Doug Pederson. Despite being in the league over 2 decades as a player and a coach, does not seem to know who the great coaches around the National Football League is. Why do I know that? Because he wanted to bring back the same staff. Case closed. All right,
Adam Caplan, Inside the Birds podcast. Great stuff. Howie Roseman, you mentioned 2016. Now, he's a very interesting guy to kind of nail down to what he's responsible for, what he's not responsible for. You know, we've heard it's a collaborative effort, that Jeffrey and Roseman and Pederson, I don't know how much we believe. Well, the coaches wanted Rieger, and Roseman and his staff wanted Jefferson. You know, if that's the case, you know, that makes it sound like, well, you know, how much power does Roseman have? And I go back before 2016.
I don't know what that. I don't know what. I saw some stuff out there that's just not true. But I don't know what some. It just go ahead, Mike. I just see some stuff out there. All of a sudden, we're seeing this.
Right, exactly. No, so it's almost like they're trying to make it difficult to pin blame on Roseman. They're trying to make it like a collaborative effort. And I'm pretty sure you were there when Andy was having a tough time, and Jeff Lurie had a press conference, and he said, "Look, we used to go off Andy's draft board. And Howie used to make a draft board. We never really went off that, but we're going to incorporate his draft board more now." So how much influence does Roseman have on draft day, and how much influence did Pederson have? Because it was like Pederson had no voice, but then you're hearing, well, he wanted this guy, and he got, so how much influence does Roseman have on draft day?
He has personnel control. He makes all the decisions. He takes input because you got to know what the coaches need to be successful. The biggest issue with this football team in 2019 was speed at receiver. They were going to go with Rieger. It's just the way. I put a scoop out a week before the draft. The Eagles were very heavy on Rieger. They want speed. They want versatility at receiver, and that's the way they were going. Now, why didn't they go with Justin Jefferson? There was a belief internally that they didn't think he could play on the outside. By the way. And be successful. Now, obviously, that we know what the results are. Not very good if you had that belief. There were a lot of teams that felt the same way. Now, when it comes to Jalen Rieger, they thought he's super explosive. Also, as a returner, as a punt returner, though he didn't do very much this season due to injury. But they believed, and Roseman did, because he picked him. Trust me, he liked Rieger. He was not talking to anything. That's just complete nonsense. I don't know where that came from. I don't understand the spin control that's coming out this week. And by the way, it wasn't just one reporter. I don't know what's going on with this stuff. I just kind of laugh, and there's some agendas going on here. But trust me, they wanted Rieger, and that's the way it was going.
Looking ahead at what's next, you softly mentioned it at the top, but what exactly is the timeline for this new head coaching hire?
Yeah, and I know people have asked me that. I do believe by next Friday, if we don't have a head coach, it's because they didn't find who they wanted. I look for second interviews next week. Now, unless something happens, and this has happened when I've done it involved with coaching searches in terms of reporting and gathering information, every once in a while, a guy that will have an interview where they just blow him away. Andy Reid in 99. Andy Reid had never been a coordinator before. The Eagles did their research. I remember Joe Banner, the Eagles' former president, telling me it was over after they interviewed Andy Reid. It was over. They interviewed a lot, Jim Haslett, and a lot of pretty good candidates in 1999, but they were blown away by him. And it was over as far as they are concerned. So you never know until you sit down with someone. And that's the thing. When you hear someone's a favorite going in, it doesn't mean they're getting the job. Robert Saleh was believed to be the favorite for the Lions job. He wanted the job. They wanted him. He went to school in Michigan. He's from Michigan. The interview didn't go as well as they had hoped. It didn't work. 4 days later, he's the Jets head coach. So you got to be careful when you see these reports out there. Oh, this guy's a leading candidate. Well, he may be going into the process, but he may not be going out.
Adam Caplan, it's Football at 4 from the Inside the Birds podcast. Those guys do a great job. Make sure you listen to Inside the Birds for a lot further in depth on all these. Of course, we're limited on time, so we want to keep moving and get to the next one. And here we go. In-person interviews that are happening. Deuce Staley, Gerard Mayo, they're today. Any one of those two have a legitimate shot to get this job.
All right, so let's go with defense guys because Hunter brought it up. The only way a defensive head guy from the defensive side of football, and Gerard Mayo is really smart, and he was a really good football player for the Patriots. He's only been coaching less than 4 years. They would have to have a all-star staff. Like I'm told that Joe Brady, the Panthers, has a great staff he's trying to put together now. Whether he could get those coaches or not is another story. But Gerard Mayo would have to have this great quarterback developer because I'm telling you, as I noted on our Friday morning show, you can hear a little bit more about it, but I'll give you a little snippet, a little nugget. I talk about on that show Joe Brady and what he's trying, how his interview went, and so forth, and what the Eagles are looking for in a coach, and some of the traits Moshe and I talk about. But believe me, folks, when it comes into it, you got to have an analytics. You got to be willing to embrace analytics, like Doug Pederson was. He wasn't getting the job unless he embraced it. And I give a nugget about the quarterback situation here in Philly, which is fascinating from multiple sources that told me about the interview process with the Eagles. So you better, if you're a defensive coach, guys, you better have someone who could coach the quarterback position and also develop the quarterback and also believes in the passing game. That's another issue for these coaches.
So let's talk about the guys who are still in the playoffs. Kafka, Bieniemy, Brian Daboll, those are Todd Bowles. Those guys are still actively coaching. So
yes.
Handicap that group.
Yeah, Todd Bowles is a guy that they know. John DeFilippo, the Bears OC, was on his list to be his offense coordinator with the Jets. The Eagles blocked him in 2017. I suspect that he would be one of guys he would consider if he would get a head coaching job as his offense coordinator, and obviously the Eagles know him. He left on pretty good terms, and then when you that's actually a good guy to have because he was the one who developed Carson Wentz and actually Nate Sudfeld, and he's done tremendous work. When you look at Brian Daboll, I'm told the Eagles do have interest in him. Brian Daboll has to make a decision whether he wants to be a head coach now or later. Brian Daboll is going to be pursued for interviews by multiple teams, I'm told. Really, he's done one of the best jobs of my 21 years, guys, of coaching quarterbacks. Look at the job he's done with Josh Allen. I've never seen accuracy improve so much. He's done a great job. We talked about Joe Brady. Kellen Moore also is a guy that's I don't know if he's interviewed yet. He's on their interview list. They know him. He knows them because he's coached in the same division and played in the same division. And Mike Cav is a guy they think is super smart. They want to talk to him. He might be on the list of Dan Campbell, who's the favorite to get the Lions job, I'm told. So keep an eye on that. Super smart. He's their passing game coordinator. He is their passing game developer. He works with the quarterbacks. He's got a little bit more juice than Bieniemy because Bieniemy does not really work with the quarterbacks like Mike does. Eric Bieniemy is going to be more of that CEO head coach, like the Tom Coughlin type. I love Bieniemy because he's got great command. Mike's only been coaching 4 years. I know the Eagles think he's super smart. Andy Reid drafted him here in 2011, so he knows him. But I just think we're a little bit early with Mike Kafka. But I know this. They like Mike Kafka, and they're really interested in talking to him. We'll see what happens. How
about the college ranks? We've heard the names Lincoln Riley, Ryan Day, and even Luke Fickell's name's been thrown out there.
Yeah, Fickell's done an unbelievable job with Cincinnati. We'll see what happens there, but they've noticed him. I don't believe Ryan Day is on their list. I just know that what happens is when you go on a coaching search, you might start with 30 names and you whittle it down to 8 to 10, sometimes a little bit more. The Eagles have a little bit more on their list. But Ryan Day used to work for them, but I have not heard that he's on their list. They may have done research on him, but I've not heard that he's on their list. But who's the other guy, Hunter, that you mentioned?
Lincoln Riley?
Oh, yeah, he's on their list. They love him. The way I see it, you could put him at the top of the list. If he's willing to sit down with him, Howie Roseman, Chip Kelly was his man in 2013. He was not losing that race to the Browns and Joe Banner when Banner was running the Browns. I know Joe said that they like Chip, but he wasn't their first choice, and you could choose to believe what you want. But Joe did tell me that. I could just tell you though, Roseman was not losing that battle, and he got Chip Kelly.
Let's leave with this before we get who you think will be the coach. We go back to Roseman real fast. John Dorsey's here. Does John Dorsey end up having more say on draft? Does the Eagles do something, or will Roseman be in charge of the 2021 draft?
Yes. John Dorsey's just a consultant. I don't know where people are getting all this stuff. John and Howie have known each other for years. Howie likes talking to guys who he respects, and that's just the way it is. Yeah, people run with stuff. Moshe and I have known about this probably since August. But we had not heard his name, so we kind of forgot about the story, and then it got reported by NFL Network. In fact, he's been talking to Roseman since probably May about potentially coming in. They didn't get the contract done for a couple of months, and then he got brought in really in certain meetings. I know he's been involved lately, just in terms of talking to Howie and looking the way things have been done. But no, this Roseman has full personnel control. He's not giving it up to Dorsey. I don't know where the stuff starts.
Okay. The coach will be? Who's your pick? Prediction.
Lincoln Riley, if they could get him. I don't know that he's willing to leave. Some people around the league think he wants to be head coach. Some say no. We'll see what happens. Remember, he flirted with the Cowboys last season. But lot can happen here. By the way, listen to our show Monday morning. We're probably going to have 2 or 3 names. If they have not zeroed on anyone on Monday, we're probably going to have a couple names we're going to add to our show. So listen at 6 a.m. Eastern on YouTube and any podcast platform.
There you go. At Caplan NFL. If something happens, follow him on Twitter. Of course, Jeff Mosher will be on Monday's show for Football at 4. Those guys will have a new show at 6 a.m. Monday morning with the latest on the Eagles coaching search and all next week on Football at 4. Powered by our friends at the Inside the Birds podcast. Adam, have a great weekend, man.
Guys, thank you.
Good football stuff, good football conversation.